Elon recently said Tesla has the most advanced humanoid robot in the world. But is this actually true? This video is the first in a new series that I'm starting, where I'm going to be comparing the best of the humanoid robot competition to Tesla's Optimus to objectively determine if Tesla really has the most advanced robot in the world and what, if any, advantages they have over the competition. In this first video, I'm going to focus on a comparison between Optimus and Figure AI's recently released Figure 2 robot, including commentary from a recent conversation that I had with expert Dr. Scott Walter, PhD. So stick around because you're not going to want to miss this. I'm John, and this is Cleanerwatt. Without Tesla's leadership, electric vehicles would not be popular as they are today. And many of the electric vehicles that are available, if not most of the electric vehicles that are available today, would not be available without Tesla's leadership. But did you know that Tesla has actually been instrumental in popularizing humanoid robots too, and has actually been a big catalyst in that sector too? I was not aware of this, but this is something that expert Dr. Scott Walter, who goes by Going Ballistic 5 on X, brought up in a recent conversation that we had about Optimus and Figure 2.
The thing to point out is that until about 3 years ago, August 2021, no one took humanoid bots seriously. And we kind of knew a little bit about Boston Dynamics, and there were funny memes about it, but no one really thought it was ever going to do anything. And they weren't aware that there were these other companies that already had formed in like 2015 and 2016, like Agility or Apptronic or Sanctuary out there or 1X. These other companies have been around before 2020, kind of working and solving that problem, almost in stealth mode and almost not wanting anyone to know about because they'd probably laugh at them. And then as soon as Tesla came out, there was, let's say, a little bit of laughter about that, but some people starting to take it serious after a while. And what that meant is that these other companies were able to come from out of the shadows, start talking about what they were doing. And then not only that, a bunch of companies started forming right after that, Figure being one of those. And then you look over at China, and then you look at the government of China saying that this is now a national priority, that we want to start working on this. So it's changed it quite a bit. And you've even, the CEO of Sanctuary AI, Gordy Rose, has complimented Elon for doing that. He says it's made it a lot easier for them to make the pitch because everyone has taken it seriously.
Beyond Tesla really helping to validate and popularize humanoid robotics and really push the industry forward, beyond that, Elon has claimed that they are once again a leader in the space. But is this actually true? Well, when you look at the competition, there are several companies that really settle to the top. I believe Tesla is one of the leaders in this space. But another leader that really is going after the same addressable market is a company called Figure AI, and they recently released a really impressive humanoid robot generation, their latest generation, Figure 2 robot. Here is a video that Figure recently released showing off their new robot, and notice how production ready and smooth this version of the robot looks. And then this robot actually has pretty human-like hands with 16 degrees of freedom, and I'll talk more about that shortly, but it still is walking quite slowly, as I will talk about later on in this video. And then in this section of the video, you can see the robot working in a BMW factory body shop. Figure 2 is a huge improvement over Figure 1, and it really looks quite impressive. And what's even more impressive is that Figure AI was started in 2022. So they're quite a new company, and they're not decades old like Boston Dynamics. In addition, the company has partnered with OpenAI, which of course is the company behind ChatGPT. They've also partnered with Microsoft and NVIDIA. These partnerships give them a big advantage over much of the competition and help them with expertise in AI, of course, hardware, and the training necessary to produce a usable humanoid robot. Now, of course, Tesla is quite new to humanoid robotics as well. They've only been at this for around 3 years or so, and what they've accomplished in that short period of time with Optimus is really impressive, especially once again when you compare them to a company like Boston Dynamics, which has been around for over 30 years, and only recently were they able to produce their latest generation of Atlas that is electric, with electric actuators instead of hydraulics. So really, even Tesla, I believe, has pushed Boston Dynamics forward in the industry, going to an electric actuator powered robot that I believe is going to be more reliable than the hydraulic version that they had previously. With that being said, when it comes to some key specifications head to head comparing Figure 2 to Optimus, I estimate, based on an old graphic from the original Optimus presentation when Tesla unveiled the program itself, it looks like Optimus will have somewhere around 4 cameras built in, and Figure 2 has 6 cameras built in. Like Tesla, Figure 2 does not appear to be using LiDAR sensors, but is relying on camera vision for their real-world AI. So those approaches appear to be very similar, Tesla versus Figure. In addition, when you look at the battery size between these robots, they're virtually the same size. The Tesla Optimus robot battery should be somewhere around 2.3 kilowatt hours, whereas the Figure 2 battery is at 2.25 kilowatt hours, which is basically the same size. I mean, that's a very small difference between those two batteries. But when it comes to runtime, that's what I want to talk about here shortly. How long will that battery size allow each of these robots to function in real-world application? Well, on X.com, Brett Adcock, who is the founder and CEO of Figure, wrote, "We hope Figure 2 will be able to achieve upwards of approximately 20 hours of useful work per day." However, it's important to note that when that 20 hours of useful work per day number is given there, that doesn't mean that Figure 2 can actually operate for 20 hours straight. Because on the Figure website, it makes clear that the runtime for Figure 2 is 5 hours. So what's the explanation for this? Why is the CEO claiming around 20 hours of useful work per day, whereas the runtime is 5 hours? Well, here's Dr. Scott Walter explaining this in the conversation that I recently had with him.
Now, what happens in a factory is the worker doesn't show up at 8 a.m. and work constantly through until 4 o'clock. There are a lot of breaks. There are coffee breaks, there's lunch breaks, there's afternoon breaks, and that can be anywhere from like 15 minutes to half an hour or more. And then there's breaks between shifts. So what that means is that when the humans are off taking their breaks, the robots can be doing that too. They can be getting 10 or 15 minutes of charge. And if you do that, you see that you can stay pretty well between like 80% and 20% state of charge during the whole day, because you never really want to dip below like, 20%, because then your charge curve gets a little bit slower. And you can do that and make it through. And then you can make it to the end of the shift, where usually there's a 30-minute changeover time between there that gives you more than enough time to get back up the top of the curve. So with that, you can easily get 20 hours out of a bot in a 24-hour day. So when they're saying 20 hours, that's what they mean. That we know you can do that with strategic charging. And if you're really good, depending upon it, you might be able to get as high as 22 hours. But 20 is a pretty safe bet.
Now, when it comes to a comparison for their hands, both Optimus and Figure 2 have very human-like hands, and Figure's new 4th-gen robot hands have 16 degrees of freedom as compared to the current Optimus robot, which has 11 degrees of freedom. However, Optimus in the near future should have new hands with 22 degrees of freedom. With that being said, here's Dr. Scott Walter talking about degrees of freedom in robot hands and comparing Tesla Optimus to Figure 2.
The current Optimus design out there has only 2 knuckles. They took one away because of this old mantra, "It's the best part is no part." So do we really need 3 knuckles? So they tried it with that. And clearly in the 22-degree freedom hand, they've decided we're going to put that back in. The other thing is that with your fingers is that you have this ability to clench. That's like 1 degree of freedom on the knuckles that are down on your palm. You also have this ability to spread your fingers out that way. And so Optimus has added a second one there in their 22-degree freedom hand. They don't have it right now, and neither does Figure. So what Figure has is they have the extra knuckle, which is the way that they're able to kind of get up from 11 to 16, plus a little bit more dexterity. They have like an extra knuckle on the thumb that they have. Both of them have 2 degrees of freedom on how the thumb moves around, but Optimus only has 1 knuckle. Now, what's the importance of that? Well, the extra knuckle may have something to do with like the shape that your hand's going to take when it tries to grasp something. If you take one of them out, it may be a little bit harder to do that. And again, this is what you get from testing. You build something and you learn, it's like, oh, maybe we really did need to get a little bit more shape in there. The human hand probably also has some flexibility in the palm that most people are ignoring there. And then it also comes down to whether you count the wrist and the hand. So when you have like that 27 degrees of freedom, they're actually counting 6 degrees of freedom in the wrist, meaning position and orientation. And we don't count that. when we're looking at the degrees of freedom of the bot, because the arm is taking care of the positioning and the arm counts the wrist axes in it normally. So when you're looking at the 16 degrees of freedom that Figure has, you're talking about past the wrist. So that's all the movements in the hand. And the same thing with the 11 DOF that you have for the Gen 2 Tesla bot. But now Tesla has sort of changed how you do that counting, in that the 22 degree freedom hand is really a 19 degrees. So they have, like, you could argue 3 more degrees of freedom than you are seeing in the in Figure. And the reason is because they can do this, okay, where Figure cannot do that right now. And this is kind of this hand splay. And I now Elon says that means it can play the piano. So, I mean, pretty clear you don't want to be able to do that, play the piano. However, it cannot do this. So Elon's not officially said that, but he has said to someone privately, and I know that for sure. Okay, so that means you need individual control. And that individual control means how many actuators do you have in your hand to do that? Because if I'm going to move this finger, I need an actuator for it and one for this. But if I tie them all together on the, let's say, the same puppet string, whoop, you know, they'll either go out or they'll do this. Now you might be wondering, wait a minute, there's 4 fingers here, and the difference between 16 and 19 is 3. So where's that extra degree of freedom? Well, Figure has 1 more in the thumb. So they basically have 3 knuckles. Whereas if you really look at your thumb, there's 2 knuckles on the thumb, but there's actually a 3rd one buried down here that you don't notice. And that's why Figure has that 3rd one in there. So now what Optimus has done, or the 22 degree freedom hand, is all the actuators are moving from the palm back. So right now it's there for an Optimus Gen 2. It's also there for Figure. What they've decided is we're going to move everything back here. All the actuators can go back here, which is going to leave more room in the palm. And it's going to be done through tendons, or basically puppet strings, if you think about it. And that means now the wrist degrees of freedom are part of the hand. That's why they're counted as 22 degree. And that means Elon has said they're really not thinking of it as a 22 DOF hand. They're thinking of it as a 22 DOF arm, meaning the lower arm. It's not including the upper arm.
Okay, next, when it comes to a compute comparison, Tesla is using their latest generation hardware for FSD computer in Optimus, and since Figure has partnered with NVIDIA, Scott Walter believes that they are using the Jetson Thor robot computer, which is specifically developed by NVIDIA for robotics. Now, I don't believe all the specs for Jetson Thor have been released by NVIDIA, so we don't have all the details for that, but according to Scott, Jetson Thor should be pretty comparable to Tesla's Gen 4 FSD computer, so I don't necessarily believe that Tesla has an advantage here when it comes to compute. Nonetheless, here is Dr. Scott Walter talking about this.
It's probably the Jetson Thor. I assume that's what they would be using for the onboard compute, which let's say is comparable to maybe like the FSD chip. We don't know enough about the two to how to fairly compare the two, but let's just say that they're on par.
Next, when it comes to speech recognition, I believe for humanoid robots to be really practical in real-world use, you need to be able to talk to them, and the robot should be able to take commands from a human just by talking to that robot. And I believe that's a key technology that needs to be solved for humanoid robots, especially when it comes to domestic applications, but also this will be useful in industrial applications. Well, Elon did make a comment during their 2024 annual stockholder meeting that indicated that Optimus will be able to take voice commands in the future, but this is of course not something that Tesla has demoed with Optimus just yet, but it looks like Optimus will in the future be able to take commands via voice. When it comes to Figure 2, thanks to the OpenAI partnership, Figure 2 is capable of taking speech commands. In the past, Figure AI did actually release a demo of this capability, and it's really showing that this kind of technology is already possible with Figure's robot. So this may be a place where Figure is slightly ahead of Tesla. Once again, Tesla hasn't demoed this kind of speech recognition with Optimus just yet. They may not be there yet, so they may be ahead of Tesla in that regard. I'm not saying Tesla won't get there, but potentially they are ahead of Tesla in that regard. With that being said, as a side note, Elon has said in the past that Tesla is a leader when it comes to real-world AI. However, Figure AI, thanks to their partnerships with NVIDIA, OpenAI, and Microsoft, also seem to have some pretty impressive real-world AI expertise. And as Brett Adcock posted on X, Figure 2 has an onboard VLM. This enables semantic grounding and fast common sense visual reasoning from robot cameras.
We're all familiar with the LLMs. That's these large language models, where basically the tokens is language that you put language in, you get kind of language out. The idea of going to a VLM is that now the tokens are basically visual things. So it's like, so that's the difference. It's taking this it's seeing what's going on in the world, and from that is processing it. So rather than taking what you're seeing visually and turning it into language tokens, you're kind of looking at it directly and understanding, interpreting the world to get this more end to end. The same thing with speech. The speech to speech makes sense because right now we've been able to cobble things together. For years, we've had these things that are able to do text to speech and speech to text. And then you can take my speech, turn it to text, and now I can take it to a large language model. And everyone's kind of put those things together. The thing is, there's a lot of things kind of lost in the nuance, right? The way I'm speaking inflects a lot about my mood and what I'm thinking. If you convert that to text, it has a very different meaning. The nuance is kind of lost. So the idea of having your large language models no longer being working on text-based tokens, but really listening to what's going on and getting the output, not only will be faster, but there will be less loss in translation, I guess you could say. So there's huge improvements. Now, the question that I have with Figure is whether they can do that with onboard compute. Because we've seen the Figure demo where they've done that speech where you can speak with it, and we know it pauses there because it actually has to connect. And more than likely, I've spoken with John Gibbs a little bit about it because he's like really the expert in there. I said, well, when you're talking about speech to speech and being able to do that, how much power do you need for that? And I just asked him, do you need more than 500 watts to be able to do that with like edge compute? And he's like, oh yeah, definitely more. And it's like, well, that's your energy budget right there. Because we want to stay under 500 watts just to run our actuators. So that more than likely is going to be something you want to offload. So anything that consumes a lot of power, if you can offload it just with simple Wi-Fi connection, which means you'll add a little bit of lag to the system, but that's not a big deal because once you tell the bot to do its task, it should just go over and do it, and you shouldn't be having this running conversation the whole time.
Now, it is important to know that Tesla is likely using a VLM model as well, and this is Tesla using vision to make decisions based on what the robot perceives. And I believe this is also what Tesla is doing with her FSD software. So in this regard, it looks like Figure 2 has very similar expertise in this space, but maybe Tesla has a little bit more real-world expertise because of their FSD software and how many cars this software is installed in. So they probably have more details there. But Figure 2, with the OpenAI and the NVIDIA partnership, they do have a lot of expertise in this space as well, and they are trying to solve general humanoid robotics with the same kind of approach. Okay, moving on to a weight and height comparison. It looks like, based on a number that I was able to find in a Forbes article, that the latest generation of Optimus probably weighs somewhere around 161 pounds. That number is not official, but it likely weighs somewhere around that. Figure 2, according to Figure's website, weighs around 70 kilograms, which equates to around 154 pounds. So very comparable when it comes to weight. Figure 2 is also around 5 foot 6 inches tall, and the original Optimus spec was that Optimus would be around 5 foot 8. So size-wise and weight-wise, they're very similar. Now, with that being said, let's move to walking speed because this is actually something that is key. Tesla aspirationally originally listed the walking speed of Optimus at 5 miles per hour. And on Figure's website, they list the walking speed of Figure 2 at 1.2 meters per second. 1.2 meters per second equates to just a little bit over 2.68 miles per hour. But Tesla's Optimus is clearly nowhere near 5 miles per hour when it comes to walking, and even the Figure 2 robot, at least in the demo that they shared, is not walking anywhere near that 1.2 meters per second, or a little bit over 2.68 miles per hour. Here's Dr. Scott Walter discussing walking speed.
The 5 miles per hour is more of a tongue-in-cheek of like, it won't be faster than 5 miles per hour because so the humans will be able to easily run away. But 5 miles per hour is probably excessive. You don't need it to be that fast for most tasks. And industrial engineers, you usually use the 1.2 meters per second, which is about 2.6 miles per hour, which is half of that. And Figure originally put on their website that they were like aiming aspirationally for 3 miles per hour, and which was technically slower than what everyone else was doing. But when I looked at it, it says, oh, that's actually the number I would choose also. I mean, I'm not going to try to make mine go 5, It's nice to say you can win these awards that we have the fastest humanoid bot, but in many, around the swimming pool, they say, do not run. They say the same thing in the factories. Okay. You're not allowed to run. So right now, looking at it, they haven't really told us, neither Tesla nor Figure, on how fast they're walking. All I can do is like, look at the video, count steps, look at how much time has gone by there, and estimate what the stride size is. And from that, I'm estimating that they might be, both of them, around 1.3 miles per hour. I think Tesla might be a little bit faster than Figure, because I had a hard time knowing exactly what the foot size was of it. So Figure might be 1.1 miles per hour, something like that. Now that's still about half of where you would like to be. And again, we're mixing, meters with miles per hour and stuff like that. 1.2 meters per second, which is what industrial engineers like to use, is like 2.6 miles per hour. So you can see if we're at 1.3, they still have a factor of 2 to go.
Next, when it comes to payload, Figure 2 should be capable of carrying around 44 pounds, and a number that I saw thrown out in the past was that Optimus should be able to carry 45 pounds. So their payload capacities should be very comparable. I believe Tesla is going to be able to bring a robot to market, a commercialized robot to market, faster than Figure 2. It still may take longer than Elon estimates for this, but it looks like they are potentially ahead when it comes to a timeline for manufacturing. Now, of course, Elon in the past has been very overly optimistic when it comes to timelines like this. But if they are actually able to do that, that would probably be quite a bit ahead of what Figure 2 is actually aiming for, because I don't see any public production dates or timelines given for the Figure 2 robot. And I believe they still have quite a bit to develop before they're going to be ready to sell this commercially. I could be wrong on that, and maybe we'll see something come out. But as it sits right now, I would guess that Tesla will be able to bring a robot to market, a commercialized, ready-to-sell robot to market, faster than Figure AI. In addition, somewhere where I see Tesla has a huge advantage comes down to manufacturing expertise. Figure AI does not have manufacturing expertise like Tesla does. Tesla has learned how to mass manufacture very complex vehicles. So they know how to manufacture complex things. So mass producing a humanoid robot should be much easier for Tesla than a company like Figure 2. I'm not saying that Figure 2 won't be able to partner and figure this out. However, Tesla does seem to have a key advantage here when it comes to manufacturing, especially when it comes to low cost manufacturing. So in the end, Optimus is very impressive, and what Tesla has been able to accomplish with Optimus in a very short period of time is very impressive. But in the end, Figure 2 is also very impressive. So I don't believe that Tesla is like miles ahead of Figure 2 when it comes to technology. And really, results in the future will tell who really is ahead. We'll have to really give this a little bit more time to be 100% sure. I lean towards Tesla having some advantages because they have so much expertise with their FSD software and real-world AI. But nonetheless, in a head-to-head comparison, there's not just a huge advantage that Tesla has when it comes to hardware and technology over a company like Figure AI. I believe Tesla's advantages are more in manufacturing and resources and talent than anything. But nonetheless, I would love to know what you think about all this in the comments section below. I'd also like to say thank you to Dr. Scott Walter for talking to me and spending time with me discussing these topics. And thank you to all of those of you who support me through Patreon. Your support makes a big difference and does help make these videos possible. If you'd like to find out more about how you can support my work through Patreon, I will put a link in the video description. Thank you so much.